Welcome back to the Soul Gym. If you caught our last video, you heard a bit about my journey to finding real, lasting peace. But I did not do this alone. So today I am sitting down with my co-founder, Mina, to dive into her story. So, how she went from burnout to balance and why the Soul Gym exists today. So, Mina, thank you so much for being here
You
again in
having
the
me.
same digital room.
I know. Yeah. This looks familiar, guys. Yeah. Um, yeah.
Yeah, so welcome back. Cool. She's here. We're here. Okay, so let's get into it. So, let's start at the beginning. So, can you describe a time in your life when you realized something had to change in regards to peace?
In regards to peace, I mean, there's been many moments I think in my life where there's been changes and things needed to change for me to grow and get into where I am now, especially being an RN, a nurse. I think one of the biggest ones was post grad, undergrad, transitioning into becoming a nurse and realizing this was the next step for me in terms of just the lifestyle that I started to lead already and wanted more of. And I was like, quick backstory, I was a nanny, babysitter, kind of substitute teacher, really jack of all trades, hustler in that sense with caregiving. But I had a pre-med background, so I always knew I wanted to be in something medical healthcare, but I also had this big
Right.
compassionate heart for children and caregiving and teaching and just taking care of people. And
Mm.
so I didn't even realize I had many nurses around me in terms of the parents that I nannied for and babysat for, or like the friends.
Somebody's mom,
So
your
yes, yeah,
bestie's mom.
Jay's mom's a nurse. But it was like I was surrounded by it, but I just never thought that for me. It wasn't on my radar.
Yeah.
And I think it was when I was like almost a couple years in, like post grad, I'm just like feeling again, I always felt like I wasn't do where I needed to be or doing what I need to do, but I didn't want to feel forced to like do like a lot of my undergrad colleagues would go straight into like a big corporate job, but I just didn't feel like that was for me. And I felt like I was more of the entrepreneur in that sense. So I really was self-employed before graduation and post grad full time. And I learned a lot about how to budget and finance for myself and really see where every dollar went. But when it came down to, I'm like, I feel like I'm at a crossroads where I want there's a next elevation. And this was also a God moment of speaking to me and um, just instilling in me um, like this intuitive gut check of just like, there's more I need to be prepared for and to do. And at that point, I really started diving into health, like more naturally, holistically, like lifestyle wise, like things I ate, what I chose to buy, organic versus non. Some of the routines I already started doing, like oil pulling, which is with coconut oil, like even the makeup, I started really becoming interested in makeup like for the first time. And I was not a makeup girly, but like what goes on my skin and how even things that go on our skin and how it feeds into our health. And so I really had some conversations with some people and it led me to like nursing. Nursing is so broad, it's international, it's universal, it's job security as well. But I realized never wanted to be someone who felt like they were I always like to have options. I always knew I would get bored with something. I didn't want to just do one thing monotonous and be done with it. So for me, I really needed something that would give me freedom. And I was like, oh, if I become a doctor and I go the pre-med route, I wouldn't have, it would take forever, first of all. And at that point, I was like approaching 30s, like late 20s. And I was just like, I don't feel like that was right. It didn't feel right. I could have been a PA, and that would just be 2 years. But I also felt like I wanted something where I can eventually be my own doctor, but in less amount of time, but also really
Hmm.
be hands-on with people. And so nursing was that. I was considering occupational therapy, and that was what the toss-up was, but I ended up going with nursing because I can become a practitioner within 2 years of experience. So that kind of led me to what I felt like my whole 20s and undergrad schooling and all of this in between, which I say I don't take for granted, and I feel like it was definitely meant to be. And I wouldn't be the type of nurse I am now if it wasn't for all those things I learned along the way. Because I felt like if I became a nurse when I was freshly out of college with like the nurse bachelor's degree, which was a big thing then, I would not have the backbone or even the sense of myself as much as I did
Mm,
now than I did then, because I probably would have flunked out of nursing and been like, this isn't for me, and burnt out sooner because I didn't really know myself and I didn't really know the things I needed to learn from nannying, from being my own boss, from being self-employed and substitute teaching, like doing all these different hustles and being flexible and changing and going with it. And then I became an ER nurse out of it. So what really started the change for me was that transition from like, okay, um, career, like from like, okay, entrepreneurial young 20s to, okay, what's the next career shift? And it was going to nursing school, getting that license, and then ultimately becoming a travel nurse. But it was that shift in 2020, I would say 16, 15, of just realizing, okay, what am I going to use this license for? And all that I've already learned about myself. I know I'm passionate about this. I know I want this. I know I love education and teaching. I know I love medical. And that was a big change that led me to here. And now it's even building and growing on that because now I can become a nurse coach if I wanted. I can do so much, but this license has given me so much more freedom now, and autonomy. And it's opened up my eyes to see the possibility of what I can do now. But that also plays into my burnout and peace story. So, anyways,
so it sounds like for you that was a big turning point was deciding,
I
and when you decided was like a beautiful pivotal moment for you based on the fact that you had all these previous experiences that are seen as side hustles, but you were like, actually, I was an entrepreneur and I was making mine and I was creating this for myself. And so I think that's really dope. And so yeah, I would like you to share more about like where did burnout come into play? Because it sounds like you were able to juggle a lot of things at different times. And so nursing school in of itself can be really intense, but then after being an ER nurse, that's also a lot of space to hold for humans. So yeah,
yeah,
talk about that.
that's a good question. I feel like when I think of burnout, I feel like we are in a constant state of burnout, of being in that in between of like almost. And I think because even like when I was nannying, I loved it, but there was a point of like burnout or just like, okay, there's more to this and doing the next shift. But I think with nursing, I really learned, because I'm such a compassionate person, but I'm also such a giver. And I really learned for the first time or I learned the hard way, how to try and take care of myself first and realize it's okay to be selfless, but not and also selfish in a good way. I do feel like there's a gray area in that, but I was always just like pouring out, serving, and I loved it, but I didn't really love myself or serve myself. And so
Mm,
nursing school taught me how to, first of all, study correctly, but also how to take care of myself, because how it can impact my health. Like during nursing school, I learned about medical conditions that I ended up having one and being scared and not knowing what to do. But because
mm,
I was learning in that field, I was able to utilize the right tools and find people to help me get better. Um, and also nursing school at the same time, burnout, but also a lot of like guilt. And you also feel like you're not good enough if you don't make it or if you don't do it past the test. And so I was wrestling with that a lot because I was such an academic person from like beginning of life. So that was my one thing I had. So nursing school really taught me to like all that is thrown out the window, like going to college, that doesn't matter. You just need to learn how to master these tests. Even though you think you're meant for this field, you need to pass. And so I had to learn how to shift my mindset in some ways, but still have that drive and determination to know that I am going to be of service and of purpose for people. And
Hmm.
me getting through this hump will get me on the other side of that to be of
Hmm.
service. Because this is a
Yeah.
call.
So yeah, thank you for sharing that. So, I mean, I hear you are saying that burnout did happen, and also you're like grateful for the other areas, which I think is beautiful to that contrast. But what is burnout to you? Like, what does that mean?
Doing too much, saying yes a lot and not saying no for me. And so I would say my first year or two as an actual nurse practicing is when I really felt what that was. Because I took a job that isolated me from my home community because I left a different state. I left my home state to go to a new state for this job. And so I was completely alone, had my own place. So there was a lot of isolation in that. But fortunately, God did provide a lot of community immediately with that. Um, but learning how to be a nurse and learning how to not be a people pleaser or being a recovering people pleaser, I realized like I was constantly thinking about what others were thinking of me and how to please them and not myself. And so that led to my burnout personally as a professional in this field. And even in some ways, my own identity of just questioning. But again, because I came from such a great community that I knew who I was, I had people I can go back to and be like, is this accurate? Or am I just learning something? Or is this also not me? This is someone else. So it helped me learn triggers and sensors to know, like, no, this is you. This isn't you. This is them, or this is what the world. Um, but it was a burnout and just mentally learning that and holding it and releasing it. And then realizing I have a problem. I'm a people pleaser. And that is part of what can accelerate my burnout. And so for burnout for me was trying to be everything for everyone and then still not caring for myself or valuing myself. Um,
Okay.
and that's how it impacted a lot of my areas. So I love my patients, but sometimes, at the end of the day, sometimes I have to make time for me. And so 12-hour
Yeah.
shifts, multiple days a week, eventually it starts to wear on you, but then it's overnight shifts. So that's also another health issue.
Yeah.
Again, I was sustained through a lot of it, but I realized my burnout was me always saying yes to everyone, being a people pleaser, and not being kind to myself. And so I was constantly holding up these weights that I had to let go of.
Yeah. That's really beautiful. That's powerful to, again, just like through opposition and things of that nature to learn about yourself and to recognize like this isn't, I don't have to continue doing this and I don't have to continue operating at like this particular capacity, which is max, like constantly at max. And then there is no like space for just like breath, essentially. So, yeah. So I'm glad that you were able to walk through that. Okay. So, what was the first thing you said no to in order to create more peace for yourself, if you can remember? Because, yeah.
The first thing
Mm-hmm.
I think is I think I said no or let go of others' perception of me when I know who I am. So whenever I came up against a question of who I really was or like gossip or what people were saying, I had to go back to like, well, I know who I am in my heart and what my intentions are. And if that's not, you know, if that's not being communicated to me from that person, then that's not my problem. And so I had to say no to that to start regaining my own confidence. Um, to
That's a great first note. Right? Like I was thinking, and that's a box, right? For like what noping can be. Like sometimes noping seems like it has to be this tangible thing. Like I said nope to, I don't know, doing the dishes all the time. I don't know, whatever. But like, no, your nope was like an internal nope. which is
Yeah,
really beautiful and powerful and clearing. So,
it
yeah,
can look
I think that's
many
a
different ways. And I think that's the
absolutely,
beauty
yeah.
of bringing and showing and displaying with this, not just a soul gym, but just being. Like,
Mm,
for me, it starts internally because I am more an internal processor and things like that. But yeah, and then it led to more actions externally. So the change for me starts from inward because my mind, that's part of the prison. That's part of the issue. Yeah, what we tell ourselves or what I tell myself sometimes.
yeah, mindset is super huge. Okay, so how did that decision of like again that where you started with your noping, your internal noping, how did it change your life? And what was the hardest part of saying nope?
I mean, I think it's still changing my life.
Mm,
It's a journey, but it
mhm,
started changing my life because I started getting my confidence back and my joy for myself and knowing who I am and surrounding myself by people who see that, where I don't have to defend or talk about that. Just being able to be. And then I'm realizing, okay, I'm great. And then sometimes, the people who were potentially in opposition or had those opinions of me actually changed. And that was something I got to see in time. You don't always see it sometimes, but that was just one situation, right? But for me, that decision really changed, yeah, my confidence. And then that led to just me being more bold in my not just nursing practice, but just in the things I was pursuing outside of nursing and expanding my social and personal lifestyle and educating and getting to know where I lived more and just enjoying
mhm,
it, and
yeah,
savoring it. And so, yeah,
yeah. I think that's really cool to recognize. And I've witnessed this from a distance for you is like wherever you go, at least now, as you as you filter that filter of I don't have to please you and I don't have to be something or whatever the case is, or however you perceive me is that's on you and not on me. It has continuously opened you up for like authentic community. And it definitely attracts the people that are already going to be attracted to you. And it just is like again, it's there's a freedom in the mind and in the body and in your spirit. And I think that's captivating as well. So just kudos. Kudos for that. Okay. And
well,
then the
keep
other
me the
part,
love.
yeah, here we
Yes,
can
keep
give
me
you
the love.
love. Yeah. And then what was the hardest part of saying no, if at all?
Of saying no. What do you
Because
mean?
saying no, like people pleasing, there's a reason why people pleasing is like um, let's say reinforced, right? People pleasing is reinforced because if I please people, then they tend to like me more. If they like me more, that feels good, even though it doesn't. It does, right? It's something like that. And so once you stop like identifying that that's a thing that you desire,
Yeah,
is
yeah.
there, yeah, is there part of that that's like difficult?
I wouldn't say difficult. The hardest part of saying nope, um, I think was having to realize that that was the reality.
Mhm.
Um, but also, um, I don't know. It's hard. It's to say, yeah, because I'm like, so I think once I said no, it was more freeing. So it was like not hard. Um, but just also realizing I can't control, and that's part of my own story of just control and being having that control. So I think the people pleasing was
Good.
part of the control aspect that I
That's
I had,
yeah.
I cherish, and I want to hold on to. So I think that was hard
Mhm.
part of letting go of other people's opinions and also
Mhm.
only valuing mine and making that higher. That way I didn't have to worry about that control aspect anymore.
That's really good. because like that was butter. Yeah, because I think so many people
Burnout,
can identify with that, right? Like control, the ego, right? All those kind of things because people not like desiring to be a people pleaser sounds like
right,
a certain type of human. It sounds like it, but actually, it can be a person who, like, the reason behind it can take a turn of like, it's not really about the person. It's really about you and how you want to be perceived, right?
yeah,
And so it's like I don't, because I hear this a lot. People are like, I don't want people to think that I'm mean, or I don't want people to think that I'm this or
right.
whatever. And it's like you don't have control over what people think about you even when you try to control how people think about you,
That was
right?
the
Because
hard
that could turn into
beautiful
manipulation.
part. Yeah. It was like
Yeah.
the hard
So
part and beautiful part because then it's like, oh,
right,
because then the beautiful
that's
part,
the
you
first.
just get to be you, and the people who see you and accept you will, and then that's easier. It's like, oh, this was easier than what I was trying to
Yeah.
hold and grasp and not let
Right.
go of and cling to.
Right. Yeah.
That
And
was
I think
easy.
there's like there is some societal things within there too, especially for women, of
Yeah.
like being more agreeable and all those kind of things. And it is nice. Like, let's not get the game twisted. It's nice when people like you. It is nice. It's a nicer interaction and all those kind of things. But it's like to at what cost? And to be authentically liked is significantly greater
Oh,
than like they
right.
like me. They like this face. They like this mask. They like this persona
Yeah.
versus
And
they
one thing,
actually like me. Yeah.
yeah, and one thing someone told me that stuck with me was like, not everyone's gonna like you. And I really had to really take that as Bible truth because it is to help my people pleaser brain who just couldn't wrap myself around it at the time because I was just like, everyone likes me. What do you mean? Not everyone's gonna
Exactly.
like you, and that doesn't mean good or bad. It's just the reality and just
Yeah.
sitting with these. I had to learn how to
Right.
sit a lot with some things that were just like I
Yeah.
felt like I was in a bubble. I was really well protected. And so this was me
Yeah.
putting on my big girl pants and being, you know,
Yeah. I'm gonna co-sign that that is a hard pill to swallow even now because especially if you are used to being like, you know what I
hmm
mean? And then if you enter a space where it's people are like, who are you? You know what I mean? Like, come on, social media. You know what I mean? Like, you're like, in my little bubble over here, everybody likes me
gold
and
out
I'm cool. And then it's like, and now you're like vulnerable and exposing yourself, and people are gonna be like, I like you, I don't like you. And it's like, well, you don't know me. And if you
here. You're
did,
a
maybe
stinky
you
booty
know,
head.
it's like, go ahead, what'd you say?
You're a stinky booty head, or like,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
sticks and stones, whatever.
So yeah, so it's nice that you like you. And I think that's what's the
That,
most important.
yeah,
Let's
yeah.
just drop the mic. Let's just drop it.
Done. We're done
Mina,
here.
Mina, do effects when you edit. Do some effects, right? Okay, so we both had our journeys,
Yeah,
you
we did.
know, but tell me why did starting the soul gym feel important to you? Because like again, you like caught the vision immediately. Like you were like, and let's go. I was like, wait a minute, right?
Like
But
two
you were
years
like,
later. Yeah, I was
so
always ready to be like, let's do it, let's do it, let's do
yeah,
it. So for me, it
yeah.
just felt like breathing. It felt like water. It just felt like it
Mhm.
made sense. I don't know any other way to try and describe it. It wasn't even
Yeah,
like it felt right. It was just like, yeah, duh. Like, okay, let's do this. Um,
yeah.
but
You were like, ask me a hard question. Like,
you're right. It's
period.
like, I was co-signing all the things in the dreams, like, from like, hey,
Yeah.
having healthy fast food, like, all these
Mm.
little
Don't be
things.
telling my secrets, Mina.
Hey, guys, better get ready. But so yeah, it didn't even feel important. It just felt like right and it's like, how I can say it? It's, the world needs this, right? The people need or desire, even if they don't even know it yet, some or whatnot. But it's just like, I just wanted it to be out there as an option for healing, for restoration, for joy, for play. And so yeah, that's just, for me, it was just simple.
Yeah, I think that's really dope. So thank you again for the cosign of vision.
Yeah.
Um, so if you could go back and give your past self advice before burnout, what would you say?
I would say burnout's always gonna be right there, ready to take you. But I think I would say, um, probably that you, like, remember who you are. It's kind of like the Lion King. Like, I
And
think,
Black Panther.
yeah, Black. Know you- So just like, know that you are loved and that you are valuable and that your voice is important no matter what you go through. Because I think I kind of go
Mm,
back to even my grandfather when I was, for those who don't know, I'm from the islands originally. So I moved to America when I was 5, and my grandfather and my grandmother raised me. And he said something to me that always stuck with me. And that also led to my whole kind of Jesus faith story too. But he said, even when you feel like alone by your own family members, or like just isolated or sad or lonely, like, you're never alone, and that someone does love you. And so I think in the same way, I would tell my pre-nursing school Mina, like, you are important, and you need to value, or should always find time for yourself, because I didn't really start seriously finding time to even get to know me and what I liked or myself until that year I started pursuing nursing, because I always
yeah.
found my identity, right? Not always, but I tend to find my identity in others. Again, the people pleasing, or
Mhm,
wanting to be
mhm.
someone for someone else, but never really
Yeah,
knowing who I was, what I liked, what I loved, what I
yeah,
didn't like. And so
that's really cool. That's a
just,
beautiful progression. And I think that's so powerful too, to recognize like how important um, knowing there is beyond you.
yeah,
And that like not being alone, I think is so beautiful and so powerful, especially this day and age. It's not like, this day and age, right? Because there's so many things that curate this false sense of community, right? Or a false sense of not being alone, like the digital, I'm not alone and all this kind of stuff. But then there's like this like deeply internal spiritual side of not being alone, which I think is, it's beyond,
and
it's supernatural. Yeah, what'd you say?
now I love my me times and being alone, and like, because it's
Being
not
with
like
yourself. Yeah.
comfortable, and it's, yeah, being with yourself and enjoying it and finding joy in it, and not
Yeah.
feeling like, oh, I'm alone, I'm single, like
Yeah.
making the
Right.
title and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, like, this is also a status like being married, and it's great just like being married, and it should be
Yeah.
valued on the same level. But just, yeah, I really love and still do like my me time and getting to know me, and me dates, and um yeah,
Yeah.
check.
Well, there's a difference between being alone and being lonely.
Yeah.
And I
Yep.
think that's what you're tapping into. And again, as a prevention for burnout, what the other thing I got from what you were sharing was that you were essentially telling your previous self, like, this will happen. Like it's gonna happen,
Now it's
right?
gonna happen.
Like, and that I think is appropriate too, is not to be like, well, let me try to stop you from having it. It's like it's gonna happen. And I think it's okay to recognize like it's gonna happen, right? And so it's like the things that we teach and the things that we focus on and the things that we're promoting and that we lean into ourselves is that we know life will life. It isn't like you could have all these practices in the world, but life will life. But if you have like if you can connect to yourself, if you have these things, you can stay connected and like
Yeah.
grounded even in the midst of, right?
Yeah, and I
And
think,
that is where,
yeah, I think
yeah.
to make what you asked more shorter than what I said, I think, be more selfish. I would tell myself, just be more selfish.
Mm,
In that way, so that, because it's like not saying yes to everything. Like, for me, even saying yes to a contract and like being driven by the money of it all in some ways. Like
Mm,
things also lead to burnout because you're doing something you kind of like, but the demand can sometimes be really hard on you. So sometimes learning how
mhm.
to say no and take a break before you go into another one. So being selfish and thinking about yourself before you think about, oh, they need me, they need me, they need me. Do this.
Yeah,
Yes. Like, oh,
yeah, yeah. I think that's good. And I would encourage people to think of like I've heard this before, like you're a human being, not a human doing. And
yeah.
again, our culture promotes the doing so much and this imbalance of being and doing, right? And then, but the emphasis is more on the doing than the being. And being is almost like what even is that, right? So that is beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're coming
Someone take it.
we're coming down here. So what does peace feel like for you today, and how do you sustain it? You don't have to go into every single peace practice
Right.
that you
Yeah, yeah,
do, but just like in general, what does it feel like for you, and how are you like overall, how are you sustaining it?
yeah. I think peace, for me, or nope, is it feels like freedom. It feels like freedom. I could wake up and do whatever it is I want that my body feels like it's going to feed me to then help me be of service to myself or others. So be waking up and be like, we're gonna do a yoga workout or we're just gonna rest, you know. So I
Yeah.
think
So yeah, I think that's great. So your peace and your freedom is in I can listen, I can hear my body, right? I
yeah,
can actually hear
less
her.
restrictions, less like, okay, I must do this, I need to do this to meet the definition of what peace is for me. Cause that's my thing. I always have like, did you do all these things today? Then you were a failure. Like checking
Mm,
off the boxes. And then you never do finish them. And then you keep adding more things to your list. So I'm just realizing peace is freedom of just wherever you are, wherever I'm doing. Yeah. Um, in the little
okay.
things. Yeah.
And how are you sustaining that?
By listening.
Okay. Okay. That's
Yeah.
it, period.
Doing it.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's one thing you wish more people knew about slowing down and prioritizing themselves?
I wish they knew that was the secret to living longer in a way. Because when you slow down and think about yourself and prioritize yourself, you are gifting yourself more time to kind of like re renew yourself. It's like thinking of yourself like as a plant or even like um I forget, it just slipped my mind, but it's like I think it is giving yourself more time because you can only, again, we can only control ourselves. We can only mainly function for us in some ways. So, um, taking the time to slow down and listen, can save your life in a lot of ways because we're always wanting to go. And I see it, and I say this as a medical professional, seeing a lot of people coming in for different things. And sometimes it was just, they needed to just slow down and stop. And a lot of it was
Absolutely.
in your head. Um,
Yeah,
and a
I
lot of it's
think
like
that's
we joke sometimes, oh, they just miss us, they want to come see us because we see people a lot. But sometimes you see people who come a lot to the hospitals, but it's like there is something about that where, yeah, because when you're there, you are not having to worry about what's going on outside. You have to focus on yourself and your health and what brought you here. And so some people want to run away from it, but it's like hospital is a resting place, but it's also a place you don't want to stay for a long time. But all that to say, like if you kind of get the loose analogy of it, um, yeah, you're really granting yourself more time, and more health
yeah.
by slowing down.
Yeah, and before we close, something that I just thought of too, like because you said it multiple times throughout this time of like being more selfish. I can imagine that there is, the notion of like being more selfish sounds selfish, like in a way that's like vain or you are no longer caring. right? You become less like you're more apathetic or you're more something that's removed and one, I mean, for you especially, like I know you, I've met you, like you are like a super giver, right? Like in all ways. And so so can you speak to that a little bit of like how do you do selfish without it being like self-absorbed? You know what I mean? Because there
Something,
is that.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're very right. Because that is something that is one of my big things I wrestle with. Because I'm selfless and I'm such a giver, and it's like I don't get it. Um,
Mhm.
like I was even punishing myself for just watching TV and even just buying
Mm.
certain foods because I didn't have the money I felt like I should be making. So therefore, I wasn't even gonna feed myself the way I should and give nutrients. So I think there was a lot of guilt and pressure and mentally, but I think it's hard when you come from that mindset of being like so selfless and giving, and also being a people pleaser and realizing like once I know what I like and enjoy, or start to love on myself, the people that I'm serving are also going to benefit and see, and they may even start asking questions about what you're doing. They notice without you even saying things sometimes. So I can't be a good nurse if I don't also make sure that I take the time to rest or have routines in place before I go to work or before I go to bed. That keeps me at my optimized level too and healthy because I also care about taking care of people and helping teaching them, and I can't be a good example to them if I'm not leading that by example too. So even being able to be like I can't go to work today because I just worked 3 straight shifts and my body's telling me I won't be functioning optimally here or physically by doing another shift, um because then I'll be running at probably 50% or less for my patients than I would be at 100%. And there's this wrestling of just realizing it's okay to say no because um, you're preparing future Mina to help and catch things that I might have missed in that tired state that could have then be to the detriment of that patient. So I think it's a really hard middle line. But you have to just, that's why I say it's good the slowing down and prioritizing yourself before you make a decision. So I always say before I try and say yes to something or no, take some time before I respond because I always want to respond with the yes. But then
Mhm. Mhm.
but so it's really learning yourself and knowing, okay, is this selfish? Like it's not like I'm going to be calling off on my days that I'm supposed to be working, but I'm also just going to take the days that were meant for me to rest, or maybe like say I can do 4 hours instead of 12. you know it's you have to find what works for you, but I say it starts with listening to yourself and really getting to know yourself. Talk to yourself. It's not that crazy. But I don't know, I hope
It's
that,
okay if it is. If it
yeah,
is crazy, that's totally cool. And
we're
lean
not
into it.
we're not
Yeah.
normal. It's weird here, but yeah.
Yes, we do invite weird. Okay, so Mina, thank you so much. I believe
Yeah.
that I do believe that your story is powerful, and we'll continue to like talk about these things as we go
Right.
along.
Yeah.
Um, I think a lot of us have been in different elements of where you've been exhausted and running on empty and experiencing burnout and all those kind of things, especially people in various helping professionals, but sometimes people are just helping unprofessionals, you know what I mean? Like you're the helper in your crew, you're the mom of the crew, you're the dad of the crew, you take care of everybody, all those kind of things. And people sometimes are unsure of how to, break that cycle. But does negate everything I just said. Change is possible. And that's what the Soul Gym is all about. Um, if you connect, if you connected with any of this, we want you to go ahead and drop a comment below. Let us know your biggest takeaways. And don't forget to subscribe because you know what subscribing does for people. I mean, really, like, we just want you to connect if you want to connect, right? Like,
Yeah.
stay connected. And also share this with other people if you feel like this connects to other people and you're like, yo, you need to hear this or something like
And if
that.
you like what you
Uh,
see, yeah.
what you said, what? If you
If
like
you
what you
like
see.
what you saw and you want more of this, yeah, start
Right.
follow us, share it, like
Yeah.
comment, like it. But yeah,
Yeah.
and let us know what you want to hear or see, or if something sparked something for you in any of our conversations from my story to Jay's story. We would love to
Yeah.
know if that brought
Right.
more questions or things you wanted to learn.
Yes. We don't lean into hate though. If you hate and we just go we'll block your apps. Okay. So we'll be sharing more tools and stories to help you find your own peace. And we'll see you in the next one.